Hi everybody and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am making the roasted tomatillo enchiladas you should know by heart. And they start with the roasted tomatillo base, which I've made in another video because we're going to use it in several different dishes in this series. If you haven't seen that video, click on the link that is below here and you will see that short video on how to make the roasted tomatillo base. We're going to take that roasted tomatillo base now and turn it into a roasted tomatillo sauce. And we're going to do that by heating a pan here and filming the base of it with some oil. I'm using olive oil here. You could use any kind of vegetable oil that you like there. There should be enough oil in the pan to coat the base of it. And when it is hot, meaning that it is hot enough that I can put a little bit of this puree in there and hear it sizzle, I put the puree in all at one time. And then I am going to stir that around. I'm working over about a medium-high heat here until it's reduced to the consistency almost of tomato paste. That'll take 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, as I'm stirring through this now, it is very concentrated and thick, and I can easily see the bottom of the pot as I'm stirring through it here, which was not the case when I first put it in. What we're doing here is to concentrate flavors, and so this will have a very round flavor because the tomatillos, of course, are naturally acidic, so we're trying to balance out those flavors. Now I have a 1.5 cups of chicken broth. You could use vegetable broth for this. Again, a very adaptable recipe, and that will go in. Stir it. We'll come back and season it a little bit later. We have the initial seasoning that we put in the roasted tomatillo base, but next is to add some herbs to this. Classic in central and southern Mexico, of course, is epazote. Look at this gorgeous, gorgeous epazote that I got from the Mexican market here. But this is the stuff to me that really makes this a unique flavor. And I will say 1 large sprig because it's a resinous herb. It's one of those things that will add a lot of flavor, but you don't have to put a ton of it in there. I'm going to drop it in whole because we'll fish it out before we make the enchiladas with this sauce. And we're going to let that simmer along. If you don't have epazote, of course, you could grab a whole big handful of cilantro to put in there. You could chop it up and put it in there. You could put it in there whole and then fish it out like we're going to do with this epazote here. Okay, so I'm going to let that just simmer along over kind of a medium-low heat while we talk about all the rest of the ingredients that go in here. So this is chicken from a rotisserie chicken. If you have a large rotisserie chicken, you could make 2 batches of this. This is about half of a rotisserie chicken. But if you have any kind of other leftover meat that you want to put in here, if you want to roast some vegetables, they're welcome in it. This is a recipe to know by heart, so that you can vary it according to who's at the table and what the season is and what you really like. But I'm going to do the simplest one and make these with chicken, which is very classic in Mexico, of course. Now let's talk about the tortillas for this. I always recommend that you look for tortillas that come from a local tortilleria because those are going to be the ones that are most carefully made and have the least number of preservatives in them. If you can't find those, if you're working with ones from the frozen food counter in your grocery store, it's okay. You can actually get to a really good enchilada with them, but support your local tortillerias because what they have is usually made in a much better way. So I've got a plastic bag there like a sandwich bag. I'm going to take my 8 tortillas and lay them out here on the countertop. I'm using a oil spray here because I think it works really well. And I'm going to oil this. Maybe you've seen recipes for enchiladas, the classic thing, that you would heat oil in a skillet and then you would quick fry each tortilla. Now tortillas, I will say, enchiladas are a dish that are used to, that uses leftover tortillas. So they don't have to be super fresh for this. And by oiling them, I'm stacking them one on top of another here. and then it will oil the underside of it there. And then I am going to spray a little bit of oil on this back side of this first one because that's what it needs. And then I'll slide these guys into this plastic bag, and then I'm going to microwave them. For me, this is the easiest way to get to the same end as quick frying each one of the tortillas. But feel free to do that if that's what you've done before and you feel most comfortable with. This will take 1 minute in the microwave. Now you notice I didn't seal that bag. I left it open, and that's very important here. But we want to put 1 minute here and start, and we're going to let those go for the minute. That will heat them up, and it'll also like saturate the tops of them and make them more flexible with that oil that's in there. Second thing that we have to talk about here is the garnishes. And so we have Mexican crema for this one, and we have the Mexican queso añejo, which tastes a lot like Romano or Parmesan, so you could use that if you wanted to do it. We are not going to make these with melted cheese over the top of them, and I know that will disappoint some of you, but you could do that. When we put these into the oven, you could put the melting cheese over the top, your Monterey Jack or whatever you happen to have on hand. You could put that over the top of it, and you would make a different kind of dish as a little bit more Americanized and a little bit more like the, well, let's say the classic enchilada suiza that you would find in say, Mexico City or a lot of places in Mexico now. And I've got a white onion here, some cilantro that's over there that I want to put on the top of it. Very simple, but I'm going to make these enchiladas in that very classic Central Mexico way with the crema and the Mexican queso añejo. Okay, so we're going to let these guys cool off for a minute. It's just right there in the bag. At this point, we should have a nice consistency in this. I'm going to use a ladle here to show you. So this should be very easy to just ladle over the top of the enchiladas. I need to give it a taste, and we'll check the seasonings. It's very interesting when you're working with tomatillos. A lot of times people confuse the tanginess of the tomatillo for saltiness. So you'll have to think about it very clearly as you are tasting this. Okay, the savoriness comes out when you put the right amount of salt in there. Otherwise, it will be very tangy, very tangy. I'm going to turn this guy off. I have to get the epazote out of here now, which I should be able to just pluck it out like that. I'm going to set it right over here, out of my way. And now we're ready to put these enchiladas together. I'll take a spoonful of the sauce here to moisten our filling and mix all of that together. And then we'll lay out the tortillas and fill them. Okay, as I am laying out these tortillas, which actually are quite hot here, you'll notice how they were stiff at the beginning, and now they're very easily pliable. So I've laid these out now and divide the chicken between them. Okay, those just simply get rolled up, and I'm putting them in a 9x13 baking dish. Now, the next step, of course, is to put the sauce on the top, and I can't tell you how many times I have seen People that did not grow up with enchiladas think that they should actually put very little sauce on an enchilada, so they'll just do a little bit down the center, as though it was some gilding of the lily. That is not the case with enchiladas. Enchiladas, you have to completely cover with the sauce, so all the way to the ends. And the reason for that is really in the name. The name is a tortilla enchilada, shortened to just enchilada. And the enchilada, it is all in the sauce. The chili is all in the sauce. So you really douse them completely like that. There should be enough that you see it covering all around. That will keep your enchiladas from ever being dry at all. Now I've got my oven on at 400 degrees. I'm going to bake these for a short period of time. If you were doing the melted cheese, you would put it on now and then slide them in. But we don't want to leave them in there for very long at all. So I'm going to say 4 or 5 minutes is going to be the right amount of time. That just allows that sauce to really absorb into the tortilla. That's what we're looking for, but not make the tortilla turn to mush. It's been a little over 4 minutes now. I want to make sure that these don't look dry at all. So you just leave them long enough for the sauce to absorb into the tortilla and the filling to get hot. Okay, so I'm going to slide them now right over there and start the toppings. First thing that I'm going to put on here is some of this really great Mexican crema. If you don't have crema, you could use well, anything from, like, say, Greek yogurt that's thinned out a little bit. That makes a nice little tangy dairy topping. You could use French creme fraiche for this, but the dairy is very welcome with the tanginess of the tomatillos there. Second thing I'm going to put on here, and by the way, if you've used melted cheese, you don't necessarily have to do the crema or this Mexican queso añejo or your Romano or Parmesan. So I'm going to put that on sort of liberally around here. And then onion, while these were in the oven, I cut up a white onion into little strips so that I could just lay them here on top. The crunch and the freshness of the white onion is always welcome with these enchiladas. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is not use epazote, even though it looks really beautiful. It's kind of pungent to use as a garnish like that. I'm just going to tear off some of the leaves and small stems at the top. You can see what that looks like there. And a very classic Central Mexican enchiladas verdes de pollo. This is definitely a recipe you could make over and over and over. So it's a recipe to know by heart.